Kia ora koutou, welcome to Shared Lunch. I'm Garth Bray. Every week we're all about enabling people to make better wealth choices, and so this week we're with someone who's a fellow traveller on that journey, someone else who's just as pumped about helping other people work out where they're at, where they need to get to next, and how to take action on that next step.
If I can plant seeds for people, they might be able to see a future that they couldn't see. I think we get ourselves caught in these, like we want to time everything perfectly and we don't want to be the one that's lost a bit of money or whatever it may be.
It's Luke Kemeys, the people's accountant, the host of Keep the Change. Before we get to him though, some important information you should always consider when investing.
Investing involves risk. You might lose the money you start with. We recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. We also recommend reading product disclosure documents before deciding to invest. Everything you're about to see and hear is current at the time of recording.
Luke Kemeys, welcome to the Sharesies Dojo. You're no stranger to the mics and no stranger to the topics when I checked. So you're a podcast host, a business strategist, and you're also a fellow chartered accountant.
Yeah.
Congratulations, I think. What is that? What is a fellow chartered accountant? And maybe more, why?
Yeah, thank you. So I got into accounting. I enjoyed math and numbers and the economy and therefore accounting when I was at school. And yeah, I've sort of built out a career in that space. Then the fellowship comes when you use your chartered accounting experience and knowledge to give back to the community and go a bit above and beyond and really apply yourself, so to speak. So one of the youngest to receive it, which is pretty cool.
Because that sounds like something you do towards the end of the career when you've made all your bucks, you've made all your decisions, you've set yourself up for success, but you've kind of done it all at once.
Yeah, along the way. Well, part of it, often you'll see accountants will go out and they might be on boards, they might be helping out in school environments and different board of trustee roles and things like that. I was kind of looking at it going, how can I take my skill set and apply it to the here and now? And part of that for me is education and trying to help people with some of the things that I've learned. So yeah, I could probably see it coming at some stage, but probably, pretty lucky to be recognised early on.
So I guess that's a lot of what Sharesies is trying to do, right? It's all about trying to empower people to make better wealth choices and give them the access to opportunities to sort of weigh them up. Is that a little bit about what you've been trying to do with how you're advising people?
Yeah, so for me, I look at it as, okay, if I can plant seeds for people, they might be able to see a future that they couldn't see before reading something, before listening to the podcast, watching the video. And, we talk a bit about role modelling and needing more role models in the country. And I don't mean I need to be that role model. I mean, can we find people and tell their stories that other people can learn from and go, oh, well, I could be doing that. So a very quick example. Today, for instance, I spoke to somebody who went down the property route and got rental properties and things like that, and they've decided to actually, get out of that route and go down the business route. So they've built up equity and now they're going to buy a business, and now they're looking for education around how do I do this better? How do I get it right? How do I protect my investment? And they decided to do that off of the back of listening to some of the Keep the Change podcasts where they're like, oh, okay, that's an avenue that I hadn't even considered. So wherever anybody is at in their journey, I hope they can take a lesson and then apply it to their life.
Keep the change. Tell me about that.
So I used to go and get breakfast in the morning after the gym, and I had a $20 note most of the time, and I would say, can I please have poached eggs on toast with salmon? And it was $19. Sounds like it's 1980, but I promise it wasn't. That's how bad inflation's been. And I would get the dollar back and I would think, right, I would say keep the change, and I'd let them keep the dollar. And it just stuck with me. I was trying to teach myself abundance, that, I'd probably gone through and lived in an upbringing of like, okay, you've got to hold on to every penny tight and be very careful and things like that. And I was trying to teach myself a bit of, there's plenty of money in the world. If you do good things, if you add value, it'll come back. So I was sort of almost forcing myself to let go of a little bit of it, to then trust myself that I could get it back, and so that it didn't have as much of a hold over me. And that's where the name came from.
Thinking about that and thinking about how people maybe can be more financially empowered and so on, what do you think are some of the strongest forces that hold people back from that?
Well, honestly, and this sounds really tough, but I think it's a lack of action. So we don't actually want to do the things that we inherently know we probably need to be doing them. So we will, instead of saving $1 a week to create a savings habit, we'll say, well, I don't have enough money to save or to invest. And so then we tell ourselves that we are not an investor. But it's very easy for me to say because he's now got a lot of money or whatever. So, we don't lean into the actions that we know we need to take. And I think life has become so easy for us in so many different ways now, which sounds very tough in an economic environment like this, that people have gone before us and broken down these barriers, set up KiwiSaver, set up Sharesies, set up platforms for us to sell things online, set up ways for us to be able to lease our property out for a long weekend and make a bit of extra money. Everyone's coming and doing this for us, and we're sitting there going, it can't be me. And so I don't know what that is. Why don't we step to our start line and run our race, not keep comparing ourselves to other people running their race and think, oh, well, I could never achieve what they're doing, therefore I'm not going to start my own.
Because I've heard of like analysis paralysis before, almost like you're standing in the shop, which sort of cereal or whatever, there are so many choices, so many possible courses of action. Some people get into that kind of trap too, where they're just wanting to make a better decision and they never quite get to one, right? But you're saying it's more fundamental. People they learn the learnings, but they don't actually follow through and do the do.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, yeah. But part of it probably is that analysis paralysis, where part of it too, I think, goes back to like psychology of, if I make this choice, and I get it wrong, A, you've got to live with that. B, if you believe money's hard to come by, well, do you want to take a risk? Because A, you've got to own that you made the decision to do it. And then secondly, how do you get it back if you do get it wrong? And I think a lot of us are pretty risk averse.
How do you break down the risks for people so that they can actually take a risk that's the right size for them? Is that part of it?
Yeah, I think you've got to individually understand how much risk you're willing to take. So whether you're doing a money personality type test and Googling those and learning a bit more about yourself. I was talking to a good friend yesterday. He's at the stage of his journey where he is going to be doing debt recycling. So he's borrowing money to invest into the stock market. And he's like, I'm going in at all-time highs. What's going to happen. I'm going to cop a 20%, fall in it. And so he's already worrying about this. And I said, well, mate, let's say it's 100 grand. Let's be honest. If that 100 becomes 80, is your life going to be dramatically different? And it's like, it's a good point. I said, it's the same thing. If that 100 becomes 120, is your life going to be dramatically different to how it is? And no. Mike, so just zoom out from it and think, okay, what is the risk that I'm taking at the moment? And can I make more sense of that over a longer time period? Because I think we get ourselves caught in these, like we want to time everything perfectly and we don't want to be the one that's lost a bit of money or whatever it may be. But you've got to, know where you are on that journey. I think for a lot of people, if they're getting started with investing, they are, if say you're investing, I'll say to someone, they might invest $500. I'm like, if that's $550 and you've got a 10% return at the end of this 12 months, is that $50 going to change your life? Like, no, let's be honest. So the risk and even the reward isn't as big as we make it out to be. So then don't take that and go, okay, well then don't do anything. What happens, I think, once you start investing a larger number, then the increment increases or decreases have more meaning to us, and then we really start to take it seriously. But and that's why there's so much content about that first $100,000 and getting to that and seeing it snowball.
It's great to say have a plan for the first 100K, but if you're worried about the price of butter, and a lot of people seem to be, and if you're worried about the cost of living, if you're really focused on how much rent you're paying rather than your income, how do you bridge that gap?
Well, firstly, there's a word in there that doesn't help us, right? Worry. Nothing good comes when we're constantly worried about something. So as part of Keep the Change, I've gone and found people that might help us understand what's going on up here, right? And, you see things like 90% of our thoughts are the same as yesterday, and then the day before that, and 80% of them are negative as well. So your brain is fighting against you with negative information constantly. So I think even just acknowledging that and going, it's okay to keep thinking about this. However, action is the antidote to anxiety. So what are we going to have to do? We're actually going to have to do something. And that's tough because I think we don't want it to be in our control. But a big part of my teaching is basically you're going to have to find ways to increase your income, because there's only so much review your subscriptions and find the cheapest provider and whatnot you can do. And that should be, a yearly practice.
Stop handing back that dollar to the people that just sold you the very cheap salmon and eggs.
Yeah. And then focus on, okay, where to from here? What's my plan? What resources do I have? What options do I have? But, if you're stuck in that survival mode, it's a tough place to be. And I think a lot of us have probably been there where, you're trying to pay off a credit card or just get by and things. But it's a bit brutal, but no one's coming to do it for you. And I think I had to have that realization too. If I could see my life could look a lot different to what it was, but I was getting in the way. And a lot of it was my unwillingness to take that action as well. And again, like, I know that can sound very frustrating and hard hitting, but we don't have to do it straight away. Like, we can go on a journey. It could take a year, it could take 2 years, it could take 5, but it's better than staying on the same path and just getting more worry, anxiety, and kind of, fear that we can't get in control of these things.
How much of that you think is early years for you? Because you did a very bold thing. You got your mum on your podcast recently.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, kudos to you. But that's diving back into your own money history as well and your own upbringing. So how much of that is giving you an insight into how it might shape other people's views of money and their agency, their ability to actually take an action?
Yeah, massively for me. And I acknowledge that, and I can see that. And I think I grew up in a very resourceful household. So because there wasn't a lot, it was like, how do we stretch this further? And then the journey I was going on, as I got older, I'm like, oh, wow, there's an abundance out there. I can, learn from my past, but I can, take it and change it to achieve things that I once, never thought possible or wouldn't be possible if I didn't take those actions. So I've sort of had to go on that journey as well. The thing that I see a lot of is there's a whole big subsection of Kiwi people that could and will have a very different life. They just needed a bit of education, like I got from 16 studying economics, accounting, then doing 2 decades of talking to people in this space. And you go, oh, like all of a sudden it becomes, you're a lot more in control of it and it becomes simpler. And now that I'm 5 years into Keep the Change, I'm starting to see these people come out and go, oh, I applied what you said and it's working. I was saying to people, hey, if unemployment's going to increase, I tell you a great thing to do. Show up, be on time, old school, put your hand up, say you're willing to do anything extra. Get a message from a young lady this morning. She's like, hey, company-wide pay increases 3%. I've been given 8 because I put my hand up and said, hey, I'm willing to go above and beyond. I'm willing to do extra and whatnot. I'm like, epic. They've been acknowledged for and rewarded for their initiative and their attitude. And that's a micro decision that can effectively change the trajectory of their life. Because what if they now take that 5% difference between the 8 and the 3 and they start dollar cost averaging that into, a share ETF that they've been learning about, and all of a sudden 12, 18 months later, their life is very different.
That's so interesting that people are reaching out to you with those examples. You're obviously connecting with them. What are some other things that you're consistently hearing that people are either doing to get past it, or maybe there are obstacles that they're really struggling with?
Well, I think the narrative out there at the moment is that it's really tough. There's no money out there. But I'm constantly reminding people there is so much money out there. And what has changed is that it's accumulated at the older demographic, right? Because they've been here for longer. But what do they do with it? Term deposits, bank accounts, they're sitting on it. Now, what are they valuing? Well, we're running out of time because we're getting older. Therefore, we're valuing convenience, and the world's become more convenient. If you go and offer services to people, like, hey, I'll split your firewood, hey, I'll paint your fence, whatever, mow your lawns for you. There are people every week messaging me and be like, mate, I didn't believe you, but honestly, I've just picked up, 30 grand worth of work in my neighborhood and whatnot. This is crazy. I didn't realize that all this money's been sitting there the whole time. But that starts with the belief that that's even possible, right? Because if you look outward at the moment, you've basically been told, no, like unemployment's high, there's no money out there, everything's hard, the economy's broken, you probably should move to Australia. I'm fighting the tide, being like, I don't want you to move to Australia. I'm trying to give you some skills where you can get in control of your own income. So I think that's probably become something I've been really passionate about, because I've learnt more about making money and how it exchanges hands. And I don't think Kiwi people learn about that. So then we do default to the cheaper subscription, cheaper power, etc., and don't explore, how can I put another $10,000 into the family household budget? And when you give yourself a goal and set it there and go, right, what if we do it over 12 months? You start to realize there's so many different ways that you can actually increase a household income. But first you need someone to tell you that it's possible, I think.
And then there's that great wealth subscription that Kiwis love, which is just buy a house and subscribe to a mortgage and make regular installment payments, and you'll come out of it at the end just fine, right? And that's how that older generation have built up quite a lot of capital, and they've wound up in a position where they actually have a fair chunk of wealth to put around, right? But is that a path you think that is there for everybody now still?
For everybody, probably not.
What about you?
Okay.
Let's talk about you for a second.
Well, I guess, yeah, I'm a good example. I'm at the other end. I could have 5 rental properties, probably 6, and service those. I have 0. Now, why not? Well, I find it boring, to be honest. Like, I'd rather plonk my money into, shares and then just get back to focusing on the things that I love doing. But, I'll talk to property people and they're like, what are you doing, man? Like, leverage. I'm like, leverage is one word. There are many ways to leverage things. You can leverage skills, your time, audience, experience. Like, it can go wider. So I probably just don't find property that interesting for me. And what I often do with all decisions is like walk down the path. Okay, if I invest into this company and it goes to 0, can I live with that? Like, yep, okay, I can own that decision, make it faster, carry on. Okay, if I buy a property, what does that look like? Okay, then I'm going to have a tenant. Will I be frustrated if something does break? Yes, I probably will, because I can't fix things. Look at these hands. So I'm not a DIY guy. So then I'm going to have to pay for that. That's going to decrease my returns on that. But I'm not saying that, people shouldn't be investing into property. I just think maybe we got a little bit too flippant with the advice that was the way to do it, and now we've got to pay the price for a little bit where house prices are really high and people aren't then educated as to the other options that they could have.
Do you, though, look at that property journey that other people are on and get a bit of FOMO, or are you a no FOMO guy? You've already walked down the road and go, look, I'm fine with this.
Oh, not at the moment, obviously, with how flat it is. But I mean, in 2021, I was thinking, maybe I should have a new build, and So I fall into the same traps that other people do. I think what I've seen and observed across businesses, across personal investments, as soon as you start leveraging yourself, where you're like in need of every dollar of your income, I look at that and go, now you're compromised and life gets harder because you need something to work out. And I think we saw that with people, leveraging right up in 2021. Like, we should think back and go, the world was closing down because of a pandemic. And what were we doing? We were going to open homes. Like, that seems pretty bizarre looking back, right? Like, what was it all about? And so I think FOMO was so high, and now it's kind of gone back the other way. And I think I would like to just see it stay there for a bit so that people aren't as pressured to sort of get on the ladder, make the decision quickly. You'll be left behind. You're going to miss out. And you've got this natural wave of like, okay, well, maybe I'm not as successful in society if I'm not doing it and whatnot. I think at the moment we get a chance to, redo that conversation and go, actually, that doesn't define success. That it's very important to have somewhere to live. Obviously, don't get me wrong, but it's not, it's not the be all and end all of life.
You talked before about people taking a big risk and buying businesses. That seems like a really, really high risk strategy, right? Because you're not. It's a little bit like buying your own home and living in it and hoping that it's going to improve. But you've now put a lot of eggs into this basket, into this particular set of circumstances, working out. It's not going to be for everyone, right?
But you're more in control of it, and that's what I like about it. But again, that won't be for everyone. The good thing with property that people like is that you can kind of buy in and then go, okay, well, I'll sit back and log on to Homes or whatever and see what it's worth. Business, you've got to turn the screws. You've got to improve the asset value, and you're directly getting rewarded for the work that you do. So there's a large demand for businesses to be purchased at the moment, big wave of that. 1 in 2 business owners is over the age of 50. We've got a coming, I don't want to call it a crisis, but I think we're ignoring how big of an issue that's going to be as a country. Do they shut down? Do they sell? So Asia Pacific average is 28% of businesses over the age of 50. We're 1 in 2. So what does an older demographic of business owners do? Well, they're least likely to export, they're least likely to innovate, and they're least likely to implement technology. Now, what 3 things that the politicians tell us are amazing for a country? Export, innovation, and technology. So we lag behind in the Asia Pacific region in those areas where we're ranked 10th and 11th in the survey that they do each year. And why would they be risk on when it's been so tough for the last 5 years and they're getting to the end of their journey? Now, the positive to that is it creates a massive opportunity. I spoke to a business owner this morning. They've gotten out of the property journey. They've got into the business journey. I said, what's the database like? Oh, yeah, I've got about 3,500 customers in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, okay, well, at least we've got the data there. I'm like, they can have a CRM. They can use that to run ads to those people. We can start doing some analysis on who they are. We can start emailing them. There is opportunity in that database. And if you are getting, tireder by the end of your business journey, you're probably not going to be pushing harder as somebody who's a bit younger. So that's going to be fascinating for us to watch play out. But there's more opportunity there than people probably realise, but you've got to be the right sort of person.
People talk about the intergenerational great wealth transfer. This is a part of that from the sound of it.
Yeah, and are they going to pass it to their kids, or are they going to like close that wealth down? It's going to, I think, some wealth will effectively be deleted because people will just go, we're gonna wind this up, but maybe a few years ago that business was worth something. And even back to property as well, you got property and business that people have used as their retirement plan, but now they're getting to that time and going, okay, well, our capital is now stuck. So we might see the invention of new finance products, reverse mortgages that people are more accepting of. I was reading in France, they have something called is it a viager or something? You buy the property from the person in the here and now, but they continue to live there.
Right.
And you negotiate the price, and so you unlock some of your capital. So, and then, vendor finance in the business space. So yes, the business owner might stay on and have to be paid out over the next 5 years or whatever the deal is. So it's going to be more work for the AI lawyers or the lawyers, depending if the lawyers don't get wiped out by AI.
Change the tack a little bit. I mean, what do you see here?
I see billions of dollars of yellow paper and hopes and dreams of people every Saturday, Wednesday. And one of the things that I learned reading their annual report is the higher that jackpot, the more people will go and buy it, which sounds very simple. So for them to do a lot of turnover, they want a number of high jackpots in a financial year because the big number drags everybody to play.
Right, the National Desperation Index, as some people around my way call it anyway. This is not a winning ticket, sorry.
Oh. I thought you were going to give it to me.
How many were you here? Welcome to, because it's not worth a penny.
Yeah, I look at Lotto as actually like a voluntary redistribution of wealth. Like people willingly go and take their money and probably know, well, I'm not going to get this back, but I can't remember this percentage that stays and goes into community groups and stuff like that. But I'm surprised because New Zealand seems a little bit anti-gambling, but very accepting of Lotto.
There was a story that caught my eye. I think it might have been one of the radio stations, RNZ, were talking about how if you're spending $25 a week, well, I guess that's two $12 tickets, and you do that over 45 years, it's something like 58 grand. That's not even counting appreciation or anything like that you could have saved. If you chuck it in, an after-tax, after-fee return, 4.5%, it's compounding. It's going to be like $189,000. That starts to sound like a really substantial amount of money, and yet so many people would still rather just go, I'm going to have a flutter, or, got to be in it to win. Is that a healthy thing? Is that just human nature? Or is that something we have to change? What's going on there?
Well, I think it just shows our delayed gratification, right, versus our instant gratification. And to risk $25 to potentially win 20 million, it probably sounds like to psychology epic. I've got to have a go at that. I've watched my parents do it for a lot of their life, and now we've probably got a generation of people that are like gambling in a different format, whether it is actually like online doing something or like gambling with their future income. So i.e. I will use a payment provider, this is what we'll call it, which is effectively a form of credit, and I'll pay it back over the next 6 installments or whatnot. So I think we're just seeing like instant gratification turn up in our lives like easier and easier and just about everywhere we look. But all these things that are easy in our life normally come at a cost eventually, right?
Yeah, fair point. Crypto. I don't know what your thoughts are on crypto. It seems like one of those things that 5 minutes ago everybody said was a terrible idea, and now suddenly everybody's woken up and gone, hang on, this actually could be something. Is that a conversation that the people that you relate to and make content to and talk to, is that something they're talking about? Is it in their mindset, or is it not something that they're even on about?
I think it's another good example where some people are seeing forms of crypto as gambling. And so they won't be interested in Lotto or a casino or something, but they go, oh, I've heard about this thing, and if we all get into it and it could pop off and I put my $1,000 in, it's going to become worth $6,000. But your 1,000 could become worth $0 as well. Like, how much do we really know about it? I think there's a big difference between Bitcoin and the people who really get into that space and crypto. I don't know a lot about crypto, but I've kind of focused my understanding on Bitcoin and why people are so interested in Bitcoin. Over this last 5 years, what I've noticed is that there's a massive increase in understanding of how the purchasing power of our dollar is losing its value. So we might not go on the Reserve Bank inflation calculator and run the numbers, but when someone says, oh, butter now costs this, we go, that is crap. How can this happen? And so people have gone, well, what can I do? And I think those people are seeing Bitcoin as a store of wealth and a way to kind of exit some of the impact that they're feeling on the other side, where they're watching, money get created and then lose its value, and they go, okay, this looks like a life raft, they might call it, or a different form of technology and solution. I'm going to learn more about it. I'm going to back my education. I'm going to put some money into Bitcoin to protect myself from the losing value of the New Zealand dollar or whatever, right? But you could also argue, but that's why people bought property. And that's why people invest in shares, because we're all trying to beat inflation so that our dollars that we do have, that we've worked so hard for, isn't becoming worth even less. And maybe Bitcoin and crypto is just the new wave of people understanding that and learning about that. Now, if it helps increase education, amazing. Will people be scammed and taken advantage of and whatnot? Yeah, probably, because humans were looking for a quick win or whatnot. So that's the dangerous side of it, that I think people need to accept the decisions that they're making, or be very educated before hitting transfer money somewhere.
I guess that trust part is hugely important, right? Is who you're dealing with and how can you trust that? Because people will know, okay, you can buy a house and these are the ways that it could fall apart. These are the reports you can get. If you're dealing with a real estate agent, they've got a history, you can check that out. There's a trust path you can follow. For the crypto part, it seems like maybe there are fewer trust paths around, or maybe I'm just not across all of them.
Well, when I first brought crypto, it was 2020, but I'll take you a step back. So it was 2017. I was working in an accounting office, and Bitcoin was bubbling again, and a client came in and said, oh, hey, I got given a Bitcoin when I was traveling in Europe. I need to cash it in. I was like, oh, my mates are talking about that, and said to my boss, and he's like, oh, see if they'll buy it. And next thing, they were in the car driving to the accounting practice, and they've got a group of them pulled together their cash and like, yeah, we'll buy it off the client. I'm like, what the hell just happened? What did they just buy? I'm like, what is this? 2020, I start kind of thinking, oh, what's happening in the world? Maybe I should be buying some gold, and I'm self-managing my KiwiSaver. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to allocate some to gold. And they're like, oh, we don't advise that. I'm like, nah, the world's going to fall over. I've seen this before. I need to. And then I start learning about Bitcoin. I'm like, there's people talking about this again. I might buy some. So I go through to learn the process. And I think, then I go, in my mind, I go, money follows attention. If this gets more attention, it will probably increase in price. I'm willing to take some risk on it. And then I start, just getting back to my normal life. And then I see more and more people talking about it, but really intelligent and smart people. And I stop and go, why is this thing attracting so many bright minds? Like, why are some of the cleverest people in the world working on this? They either aren't, and the whole thing's going to pop, and it's going to be like, what were they thinking? Or they know something. And I'm like, I'm not intelligent enough to figure that argument out, but I'm going to go along for the ride and put some money into Bitcoin and understand more about it. And if it goes to zero and the whole thing pops, I'm going to go, wow, okay, maybe there's a really good life lesson in there for me. If not, at least I backed my own judgment.
Money makes it matter, eh?
Maybe.
You put a little skin in the game there, and you're actually paying a little bit more focused attention.
Yes.
Wow, fantastic. Look, I feel like we've covered a huge amount of ground, and I just want to applaud you for the work you're doing, and I hope you carry on trying to keep the change.
Yeah, thank you.